Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're gonna learn standard Kubernetes cluster on IBM using the classic infrastructure as well as VPC infrastructure. So next we are going to provision a standard cluster. Standard cluster we can provision using a classic infrastructure as well as the VPC infrastructure. Here we are going to see a VPC based standard cluster. So here we have a different version available to provision a particular version as a Kubernetes version. We are selecting here a VPC. So before you creating a VPC based cluster, you have to provision a VPC as well as the subnet into this particular VPC. So this is the prerequisite for the creating a cluster, as I have already created the VPC as well as the subnet in three zones. So different options available for the worker pool, different kind of instance available with the VPC. So as you are changing the number of nodes uh, which is going to install per zone, the cost will be increased. Here let's give this cluster a name. Currently I'm using the Frankfurt region to provision a Kubernetes cluster. The cluster which is provisioning in a VPC base we that have visibility to expose two service endpoint as a private as well as the public. So here in this cluster we are provisioning three nodes per three zone, and the estimated cost per month is $147. This cost is also depending on the type of instance you are using. So as I'm changing the instance size, the cost will be reduced. So just take care while you creating the standard cluster, which provision a default instance type. So currently I'm using a Ubuntu based image with a 2 virtual CPU with the 8 gigs of RAM. So let's save this flavor and provision the cluster. So let's pause some time to create this cluster, and once the cluster is coming up we'll be back and start exploring the cluster. As you can see, it's preparing the masters and the worker nodes. So it's still taking 10 to 15 minutes to provision the whole clusters. Now it is finalizing the work. So it will soon install the whole Kubernetes cluster with the three nodes, which is installing in a three different zones. Now the health status of all the nodes are green. So if there is some problem with the cluster, it will automatically display here. And we are provisioning here a VPC based generation 2 type of Kubernetes cluster. We can add different types of node into pool. Let's use the CLI and access the cluster from the CLI and start to test some deployment using Nginx. As you can see, there are three nodes available. Three nodes with the private IP as I'm using the VPC. Let's deploy some Nginx based image and see how it is running or not. So it is now running. Let's check on the Chrome browser. You can check the deployment via pod forward or the to expose the service. So it is running on 8081. So the pod Nginx pod is running here. And there are also other options available in the IBM UI where you can see the Kubernetes dashboard itself in the Kubernetes UI. And there is some also DevOps related stuff available. Different kind of tool chains are available to provision here, where you can integrate this Kubernetes cluster provisioning and deprovisioning as a part of your CI/CD pipeline by directly communicating with this DevOps. And there are also other add-ons available where you can install the Kubernetes terminal. You can diagnose and debug. These tools are available directly to install into Kubernetes cluster, where you can directly diagnose and debug the cluster. Some autoscaler is available. So this kind of add-ons are available. So you can see the health of deployment using Kubernetes dashboard. As you can see, there is a single instance of Nginx pod is running, and there are also other options available where you can communicate with the Kubernetes cluster using IBM CLI. You can also update your Kubernetes cluster if the update is available. So currently it's 1.18 and the update is available for 1.19.7. So you can directly update by this, and you can also delete the cluster by deleting the cluster. So now we're going to create a Kubernetes cluster on a Classic infrastructure. So we choose here standard Kubernetes version. We're gonna choose 1.18. The Classic infrastructure, we keep resource group as a default. So you can provision a cluster on different region with availability zone. Here you can see here 4 regions are available geographically, and if you want to provision a node into a single zone or multi-zone, you can choose it from here. We are going to choose a single zone on Washington DC 4. So here you can see that no VLAN is exist. So once if VLAN is not exist, it will provision by itself. So we no need to create a VLAN. We are going to change the node flavor. So there is a, if you want to encrypt your local disk, the option is by default enable. We are going to disable this. We need both public and private endpoint. We keep this as a default name. So let's create this cluster. So in the meantime, when the cluster is created, we go to Classic Infrastructure to see what network part of VLAN is created when you create Classic Infrastructure. Go to VLAN. So you can see here VLAN will provision. So as you can see here, there are two VLAN will be created. One is the public VLAN and the other is a private VLAN. Once we go on to the public VLAN, the VLANs are creating subnet. So this is the total 16 public IPs are available in this subnet. We can scale it later if we need it. And this is the other is a private VLAN. So our Kubernetes cluster is provisioning. So currently it is preparing the master. We have 3 nodes in the worker pool. The flavor we choose is the 2 virtual CPU and 4 gigs of RAM. So now Kubernetes cluster is up. As you can see here, 100% normal. All the nodes are in normal state. So let's try to connect the Kubernetes cluster using the command which is given here. kubectl. Now we can see the number of worker nodes. Let's try to deploy some application on it. So it is out now. Let's open it. So as you can see here, we can able to connect to Nginx server deploy on this. So that's it for this video.